going to be jumping into a series I call Family Matters, because all of us have a family. We all come from one, and guess what? We also have, by God, the ability to start one. But you and I, we're going to talk about the ideas of it because, listen, as I said at the beginning of the year, this is a year for wholeness. And I want you to experience wholeness in every area of life. And how many of you know if things are wrong at home, it's difficult for things to be right other places? So God cares more about your home than you realize. And He'll work with you. And that's what I want to provide. It's really the message that we're going to deal with over these next 4 weeks. It's simple, but simple doesn't mean easy. You and I need to realize it's an investment that God requires of us to see the return that all of us desire. And so as we jump into it, we're going to start in this regard because listen to me. The very core of family is marriage. That's where it all begins at in that end. So that's the foundation. It needs to be solid and it needs to be strong because you can only build upon a strong foundation. Otherwise, because I remember years ago, the foundation's so important. When I was in insurance, crazy, we had a tornado come through Connecticut. I don't remember back, it was a number of years ago, but I was in insurance, but one of my friends up in Hamden, there was a house that was literally, the tornado moved it about 5 inches. But it was just off the foundation, like 5 inches, just like, do you know they had to condemn the whole house? You couldn't fix the situation. The foundation is essential. And it has to be strong, it has to be steady. So that's where we're going to begin at as we talk about this. Because people will ask the question, and you may ask, Pastor Ken, does marriage and family still work? I mean, look at the world. Look at the landscape of culture today. And yes, statistically, this is kind of depressing, but I found this out to be that as long as the government has been keeping records, okay, marriage in these last number of years has been on the decline. And right now, less people per capita across our nation are married today than in any time that the government has ever kept records. Well, part of the reason, if you look at it, unfortunately, divorce still occurs over 50% of the times of marriage. So over 50% of people who give a vow at an altar to love each other till death do them part, guess what? Don't follow that through. Okay, in essence, over 50%. So people ask the question, does it still work? But I want you to know there's hope. I want you to know, as we deal with this, as we tackle this, there is definitely hope. But think about this for a moment. With 50% of marriages ending in divorce, why do people still jump in the waters? Because there's a drive inside of human hearts that we were created by God to know and be known, to experience, to be loved and to love. That's how we were designed and created. And marriage is the place where the most intimate relationship can occur. But marriage, listen to me, marriage can be the closest thing on earth that we experience, the closest thing to heaven or hell that you experience on earth. It all goes how you approach it. And that's where we're going. That's where we're heading. That's where this series is about because we're going to talk about it in this respect. Because, again, why are there so many problems? Did God make a mistake? Was this wrong? Was this a bad idea? No, here's the deal. God provided instructions. The issue that we struggle with is the unwillingness to follow the instructions. So today, the title of today's message, let me tell you where the series is going. We're going to deal with marriage in the first 2. We're going to talk about foundational assembly instructions, part 1, part 2, because we're going to talk about the simplicity of this. Like again, simple but not easy. But then we're going to talk about the third week, the key. I'm going to give you the key to family harmony, okay? Like I said, it's all simple, but the issue is whether or not we will embrace the truth. Okay, and the last week we're going to talk about, in the series, we're going to talk about the objective of parenting. What's the prime objective? What's the aim of parenting? Because I think sometimes we, even as Christians, have misunderstood or not even known. Because when you talk about problems, you see, the issue is I deal with this on a professional level. You sit down with somebody, you're in a counseling situation. Do you know what? I've never had a couple come in that were having marital difficulties and sit down and one of them go, I'm the problem. Yeah, Pastor Ken, we're here because I'm the problem. No, that has never happened. Usually they're looking at the person that they're either sitting next to or across the table from, looking at them as the problem. Because they bring them in thinking that I am going to side with them, jump on their spouse and tell them how bad they are, because that's the problem. See, we have problems because they're the problem. But I want us to look at this in an open heart and to recognize that what I've discovered through these ends is either this. Either people are ignorant of the instructions, or they just plain don't want to do them. And that's the choice. We all have a choice. Now, let me ask this question, okay? Because I'll tell off on myself. How many of you, and to be honest, to be really, really transparent with you guys, there's a bit of me where I'm, the stuff I've told you I struggle with during, this is one of those areas where I have struggled feeling like, man, I've not done a great job. So I'm not here trying to tell you I got it all together. I'm going to teach you what the scripture said, but I'm just as much responsible for the things I'm talking about. But here's the point. You and I can do this. God is with us. No matter what state your current situation is, and you're like, whoa, Pastor Ken, I'm not even married. Well, it's better to find out now how it really should work and commit yourself to that before you jump into it, have problems, and then want to try to figure it out. It's better to know up front. But here's the point. It's whether or not we'll embrace and understand. Because let me ask this question. How many people like to follow instructions? Are any like me? My wife, oh my God, used to drive her crazy. I'd open things up, and I just want to dive in. No, I can figure this out. Okay, so I want to do it. Anybody ever buy furniture from IKEA? And here's the embarrassing part. Did you ever have to take it apart and redo it? Because you realize, oh, wow, that wasn't right. Maybe I need to look at the instructions. Ever been there? Okay. Unfortunately, I've been there too often. I was like, no, babe, I got this. I can figure this out. And the problem is, too often, think about this. Building a marriage. What do you use? How do you go about building a marriage? What are the instructions that you follow? What you saw growing up? What you think just comes natural? People say, what comes natural? I got this, I can do it. And the problems is that we're trying to figure it out on our own. But following instructions, I took my diving course. And one of the things I learned within my diving course, every time they ask this question, because, I realized I better answer it the right way. Okay? Because it always say, like with your dive computer or something like that, ask the question, and what's the first thing you're supposed to do? And here was the answer. Okay? Read the instructions. Now, if I didn't answer it that way, I got it wrong. But that's always, you and I must know, because we have this tendency. And human beings have done this since the beginning. Because God's given us the ability to choose. And you know what? We've tried to go on about doing these things, trying to figure it out on our own, doing whatever we think is right, doing what we feel, doing how we do it. But here's the point. The manufacturer, or I should say the creator, gave us instructions about how this is supposed to work, how it comes together. This is just a profound thought I have. Why is it, to get a driver's license, you have to take a course. You have to go through all these hours, logging hours, right? Anybody here ever got a driver's license? Especially in today's times, right? You got to go through all these road hours, and then you got to get a test before they let you out on the road. But to get a marriage license, all you have to do is fill out some paperwork, pay a fee, and boom. Something wrong with that. You and I need to recognize that the manufacturer gave us instructions. It's kind of like a great family recipe, Anybody like to cook? I love to cook, But following a recipe, because sometimes you try to do it and, you try to experiment and sometimes they don't go right, But following a good recipe, I thought, anybody ever been to Chick-fil-A? I mean, come on. Anybody ever? Chick-fil-A sauce, It's the secret sauce, right? When Truett Cathy figured that out, He patented it, right? It's the secret sauce. And I'm telling you what, if you've never been, you've missed out on something. It's a religious experience, seriously. You know, you take that Chick-fil-A sauce, you even put your waffle fries in it. It's amazing, right? But it's a secret sauce. Well, guess what? God has given us the secret sauce. That's what we're going to talk about, the recipe of how you can apply the recipe to your relationships. Are you ready? Because here's the key. Here's the key. The big idea I want you to understand is this before we jump into all of this. Listen. Okay? The key to successful marriage and family is to follow the instructions and don't deviate from the plan. If we're honest, most of the time what happens is we decide, oh, I want to do it this way. Oh, I think this is right. And that's what humans have been struggling with since the Garden of Eden. Because mankind have been given by God choice, men had the ability to determine what was right or wrong on their own. That was the temptation, wasn't it? To eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. In other words, human being, if we were to discern our true problems that we deal with, it's when we decide to define good and bad on our own. Oh, no, this is good and that is bad. Instead of following the Creator's determinations, because the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. When you honor and respect God so much that you realize the manufacturer created instructions, and it's important that if we want this to be successful, if we want to build something that will last, and here's the point. In society, you ever hear people use the terminology, well, the honeymoon is over? Like somehow, some way, that only in the very beginning, that was when the good times were, and the unfortunate reality, I mean, you may be in this one, you don't have to say amen. You don't even have to say oh me. Just sit there and realize if you agree. Because unfortunately what happens to too many people in marriage is that there's a diminishing level of satisfaction that people experience the longer they've been. And that's not how God intended it to be. That's where I want to give you hope. That guess what? You can still follow the instructions. You can still operate and be able to take what we talk about and apply it no matter how long you've been married or whether you've not been married at all, to learn it, understand it before you go into it. It still works. There is hope. And that's important because, again, the key to a successful marriage and family is to follow the instructions. Don't deviate from it. Because why is marriage in the state that it's in? Because, again, people's either ignorance of it or the unwillingness to follow what God said. But listen to what Jesus said in reference before we jump in. Listen. Jesus said this in Matthew 7, in verse 24. He said, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against the house, yet it did not fall, because it had a foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who builds his house on sand. The rain comes down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against the house, and it fell with a great crash. The thing you and I must recognize, no matter what state you're in this regard, God created marriage, and there is an enemy against it. And all of the pressures, all of the tensions, all of the things that define in society as we are, generally don't go to helping our marriages be strong. They tend to weaken those things. Things like careers, things like what you spend your money on. All of these things can be external pressures. But here's the good news. Jesus told us that if we not just listen, and that's the problem, guys. He said what we put into practice. See, it's foolish to try to wing it. It's foolish to try to jump ahead. I just want to deal with the parts that I like, okay? But no, you got to do it all. It's like following a recipe. You got to put it all together just as it was determined. So if we follow the instructions that God's preserved, that's the good news. The Creator has preserved these instructions for all eternity. And that's why when we open our hearts to those ends, we can see it. But one of the things, before I jump really heavy into this, let me dispel a myth about marriage. Because even in the Christian community, people have had these wrong ideas. I've heard this actually touted by people. I said, well, when God made humans, he made them one, and then God took out something from Adam and made Eve. So I'm just a half, and I'll never be whole until I'm married. Well, I'm going to tell you the truth. That is not true. The only one that can make you whole is Jesus. The reality is this: too often we want someone to fulfill needs in us that they are unable to meet. The deepest needs that we have as humans, we have the need for acceptance, we have the need for security, we have the need for identity, we have the need for purpose. But let me tell you this, those only come from Jesus. They don't come. A spouse cannot provide those things to you. And one of the prime sources of marital tension, listen to me, okay? I'll tell you this from a professional level. One of the chief sources of marital tension is unmet expectations. People go into marriage expecting something, right? That's why they go into it. They expect, they're looking for love, and love should bring us together. But when you understand marriage from a biblical point of view, it's not as much about what you can get, but more about what you can give. But we go into it looking for a spouse to meet needs for us that they're incapable of meeting. See, sometimes unrealistic expectation is looking for something from somebody that they honestly cannot provide. And those are one of the reasons that marriages have suffered, because people are looking for things from their spouse that they weren't intended. But so listen to this, I wrote this. Know that only Jesus can meet our needs and be the source of marital fulfillment. Which means this: if you're single right now, the primary responsibility is to build your relationship with Christ so strong that when you get married, if that's where God leads you, that your marriage doesn't become a distraction, because the number one place in your heart has to be Jesus. Because he's the source of marital fulfillment. You know why? Because it ain't about feelings. Because guess what? When it requires you to love your spouse and you don't feel like it, you do it because Christ gives you the source and power and the ability to do it. Because it's the right thing to do. But you have to have it. That's where it has to start. See, only Jesus, listen to this. Colossians 2 says this, Colossians 2:10. So you also are complete through your union with Christ, who is the head of every ruler and authority. Healthy marriages are when two healthy people come together. See, when you're looking for someone else to be the one that sets you straight, that heals your heart, that makes things that have gone bad in the past better because somebody loves you, it's great that somebody loves you, but nobody can love you like Jesus. And you and I need to recognize this, that until you learn to love God fully, you'll never love yourself correctly. And only then, when you love yourself correctly, can you love others sacrificially. Because what we often don't recognize is that we want someone to do for us that what only Jesus can do for us. And that's why it's important, because God is love. And when we allow the love of God, he truly is able to heal our hearts. And that's where it has to go, because our relationships will suffer if we're looking for somebody else to do for us what only Jesus can do for us. So the more secure you are in your identity with Christ, the more you can love in a relationship like marriage unconditionally. That comes from God. So let me ask this question. Have you expected your spouse to meet needs that only Jesus can fulfill? Ask yourself the question. Have you expected your spouse to meet needs that only Jesus can fulfill? If in your heart you can say, yeah, probably so, then what do? Repent. That literally means, listen, change your thinking. Stop trying to expect something from them that they can't give you. Go in a new direction. Gain that from Christ. Because if Jesus is at the center of your heart and is at the center of your spouse's heart, I always tell people all the time, it's like a triangle. Here are two people. If Christ is in the middle, he'll always bring you together. That's the truth that we need to understand. So listen, as we jump into this, God's foundational assembly instructions. Because when God, the greatest New Testament discourse on marriage, is found in Ephesians 5, it always related the individual believer to Christ. You know, that a husband is to love his wife like Christ loved the church. That a wife is supposed to submit to her husband like we submit to Jesus. It always brought it back. That's why Paul said, a great mystery do I show you, Christ and the church. And that's why it's important. And that's why we need to understand the foundational building instructions. So are you ready for them? Here's the deal. God's foundational assemblies instructions found in Genesis 2 and 24. We go right back to the beginning when God thought all of this up. Look at what it says. This is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. Adam and his wife were both naked and felt no shame. You see, instructions again are simple, but that doesn't mean they're easy. They take work. It's an investment. You see, we all want the return. We all want our homes to be filled with harmony. We all want marriages that are mutually satisfying and fulfilling, but they require work. They require investment. And that's why it's important that you and I see this, because instruction 1, here it is. Instruction 1, your spouse must become and remain your priority. Your spouse must become and remain your priority. This is where that's from. That's why a man leaves his father and his mother. See, when Christ is number one in your heart, the number 2 reality before marriage is our relationship with our parents. That's what God designed it to be. That's why the Bible tells us the first command with a promise is the fourth command, or excuse me, the fifth commandment, okay? That honor your father and mother, that things may go well with you and you may live long on the earth. The responsibility we have of holding our parents in esteem before we're married, the number 2 priority relationally for us should be our parents. But at the point in which we marry, here's the point. Your spouse takes priority over your parents. Now, some of you parents in here need to listen to that and swallow hard. Because that means if kids aren't coming over for a family dinner, if kids are not coming over on the holidays, because guess what? There's another set of families to deal with. Suck it up and deal with it. Because guess what? Their relationship comes before your relationship. Guys, why am I wearing a Cedar Point shirt? Because family matters. That's what this series is about. Guess why? Because at this point in my life, a great vacation for me, okay, not that I don't like going to an amusement park, but for me, sitting on the beach, spending time with my wife, but my kids are still at an age, I told my wife, because my kids were like, we want to do, and my youngest son specifically, he's like really excited about roller coasters. And I said, babe, we raised them this way, so it's our fault. But if they want to go on vacation with us, suck it up and enjoy it. So we did it loud and strong and proud, and so I'm wearing it because why? Family matters. Because it's not about what I want. It's like, hey, if this is how we can enjoy time together, isn't that what it's really all about? And so in essence, guys, listen. Jesus has to be the number 1 priority, but all after that, you and our spouses must come before anyone or anything. So listen, priorities are what actually come first, not what we intend to come first. Priorities are what actually come first. And that's the problem. Too many of us live in our heads dealing with our intentions. Well, you know what? Yeah, I intend to spend time with my spouse. I intend to go on a date. I intend to do some things. But you know what? Work's got, it's a busy time at work right now. Or kids are going here. All the reasons, all the rationales, all the excuses. Here's the truth. What's a priority finds its way into your calendar. What's a priority are the things you actually get to, not just the things you intend to get to. And you and I must recognize this, because when it comes to making a commitment to marry somebody, that means that that person, besides God, becomes your number one priority above anyone or anything else. But how often have we allowed the rationales of culture? How often have I talked to a spouse who's like, you know what, I know my job is entailing right now, but I do this for my family. And I was like, excuse me? You're doing this for your family? Like you think buying things, where you live, what you drive in is what your family needs? No, your family needs you more than anything else. None of that other stuff truly matters. You've drank the Kool-Aid of culture, and we wonder why our marriages are in difficulty. Because why? Listen to me. Nothing can come before that. That means hobbies. Can I address an issue? Okay? That means, guys, Xbox, video games. It amazes me. I've talked to guys, listen. I talked to guys who had 4 kids. Okay, his wife was home with the kids, works, okay, came home, spends all night playing video games. I'm like, dude, how are you helping your family? Your wife's exhausted, and you're spending your time playing video games? You're like, whoa, Pastor Ken, but that's where I relax. That's where I recharge my battery. Just do me a favor. Calculate the time that Xbox has gotten versus your spouse and wonder why there's problems at home. And guess what? Everything can't be like, oh, no, you're taking time for everything else until, it's nighttime and you go in the bedroom and all of a sudden you want everything to change. Are you kidding me? I tell people sometimes, guess what? Make the bed, and then maybe you'll make it in the bed more often if you get the point. There is more to this that you have to understand, because why? Nothing can come before. Promises, intentions don't make it. It has to become a priority. Why? Because love requires sacrifice. That means, and can I address an issue? Because there's been a lot of confusion about this in the Christian community. If you're married and you have children, can I be real direct with you? Your kids do not come before your spouse. The center of a Christian family is not children. And I've met a lot of misplaced, misunderstood Christians who are like, no, we're here. And so they provide everything for their kids. And their kids become the center of the relationship. Do you want to know why the second biggest time for divorce is after 25 years? Is because by the time the kids leave the nest, 2 strangers that don't know each other anymore are left trying to figure this out. How did we get here? No, kids are a welcome addition to any family, but your marriage comes first. I give this advice to people to get married. I'm like, make sure there's a lock on your bedroom door. Okay. If you don't know what that means, I'll tell you about that privately. Guess what? No. Guess what? When you come home, one of the things your kids can learn, there needs to be family time when the husband and wife sit and talk about it, and kids realize that's not time to interrupt mom and dad. Entertain yourself for a few minutes. Dinner will come at a certain point, but we need to talk right now. There needs to be bedtime when it's like, no, don't come out of your room. Do your best to fall asleep, but if you don't fall asleep, don't come out because it's mom and dad time, okay? You are a welcome addition. You see what happens? The best of intentions. When you put your kids first, you know what you end up doing? This term was used. You ever hear the term spoil your kids? Well, what happens if the food in your refrigerator spoils? Doesn't that mean it rots? Okay? What do you do with it? Ugh. One of the things we've done, whether misunderstood or not, we've given our kids everything. We haven't taught them where it comes from. We've given them first attention so they feel they're entitled to first attention everywhere they go, in every setting, because that's what mom and dad did. Instead of realizing, listen, I'm a welcome addition. My parents love me, but their relationship comes first. So therefore, guess what? If you're married, do you have date time still in your relationship? Are you still spending time alone? You're like, well, I can't afford babysitting. We don't have, money's tight right now. Take a walk. Go get some coffee. Do what Kath and I did. When we went on vacation, we had a blast. We bought a deck of cards, sipped margaritas, and played cards through the night. We just had a blast. It doesn't require money. It just means time and attention, which means sometimes you can physically be there and emotionally be somewhere else. And you know what? Your spouse knows it. And sometimes that means sharing things. Guess what? Can I talk to the ladies for a moment? If your husband really likes sports, how about learning to like it with him? And guys, if your wife likes to shop, suck it up and go along. Maybe she'll spend less. I don't know. Maybe it'll help you, okay? But I'm trying to be practical, guys. But when it comes to our children, children are a welcome addition, but never to be the centerpiece. Because the best thing you can do for your kids is model before them what a healthy marriage looks like. The reason your kids are struggling is because they watched the model that they were raised under, and they saw the centerpiece being the kids, not the husband and wife's love relationship. That's what your kids need to see, because one day they're going to have to walk into a relationship and learn and understand that that spouse must be the love affair of my life. If it's done the way God intended for it, it's like wine. It only gets more intoxicating the longer you go into it. Because when somebody knows you like nobody else knows you, they know how to push your buttons the wrong way, and they know how to make it right. If you know what I'm talking about, okay? The key is knowing, and that's what the intimacy that God intended for us. But priorities are what you actually do, because it's the law of sowing and reaping. You have to invest before you can get a return. And that's what we failed to get. We failed to realize, because we were doing all the investing to get the relationship, and failed to realize that I have to continue to invest to keep the relationship. It's important to recognize that the law of sowing and reaping means that what you sow, you will reap. So if you're kind, if you're gracious, because listen to me, there is something that I'm going to term this way: legitimate jealousy. What's legitimate jealousy? Legitimate jealousy is when you displace something where something else belongs. Do you know that the scripture says God is a jealous God? Yes, because God said it in this context to his people Israel. He said, if you worship another God, okay, that is not me, I'm a jealous God. In other words, nothing comes before him. That's legitimate jealousy. Can I be honest? Be transparent with you. One of the struggles that Kathy and I have had is the realization where the enemy can be so deceptive. Doing what I do, ministry sometimes can become an idol. Where you feel like, oh my God, people need you, this has got to need you, da-da-da-da-da. You feel compelled, oh, I'm doing this for God, I'm doing this. And all of that in some ways could be true. But if it takes the place that only your spouse deserves, then it literally becomes an affair. And I've had to deal with those ends, to put boundaries up, to say no. That's why I have a great team, guys. But I've had to struggle through those ends of it, is recognizing, because it can be deceptive. Oh, I'm doing this for God. But no, here's the scoop. No one can be husband to my wife but me. No one can be father to my children but me. But guess what? Someone else can counsel you. Someone else can advise. Someone else can pray for you. It don't have to be me. It's my privilege and my honor when I have the opportunity to do it. But whenever it displaces the things that I'm called to be, then there can be a legitimate jealousy. Spouse has got to stay number one. Got to stay number one. Besides Jesus, no one else or nothing else can come before them. That's why if I would let some of your spouses deal with it, they would take your Xbox, they would take your PS3 or whatever it is you find, even on your computer, and smash it in 1,000 pieces. Because I would probably go, because that's what they did with idols in the Old Testament, but you'd have to deal with that truth, okay? Instruction number 2, make pursuit a lifelong endeavor. Make pursuit a lifelong endeavor. And where do I get that from? And is united to his wife. Pursuit means what you give all your energy, your attention, all that you do. Now think about this, especially in a guy's world. Can I talk? I can speak to guys because I am one, okay? So in a guy's world, guess what? when you want a girl, when you want to get married, you're willing to give it all. You go all out. You'll even dress drip. You'll care about what you wear. You care about your hair. You care about all the rest of the stuff. You're going to open the door. You're going to pay the bill when it comes. You're going to go out of your way. You'll make the calls. You'll send the text. You'll do all the things. Okay? Because you're after it. It's kind of like this, but this is a guy's mentality. It's kind of like that. That's the season. Okay? And we want to win the prize. We want to win the trophy at the end. So we're going to give it all. We're going to practice. We're going to go all in. We give it everything we got, and we're going to go. It's game time. We go all in. All right? But this is the problem. Girls, ladies, they tend to look at a guy when he's being nice. They're like, is he real? Is this real? Is this going to stay? About the time that a woman begins to realize, oh my God, I think he's really real. I think he truly does hold me in that level of esteem. Man, all the time and attention, all the money he spent, all the things we've done, this has been amazing. When they're opening up their heart to say, yeah, I think I can. It's about that time that the man goes to the award ceremony, which is the wedding followed by the honeymoon. And then he's on to a new endeavor. Because prize won, victory done. But I'm going to tell you what, that's when women feel let down. They're like, what? Was this a bait and switch? You see, you and I must realize that pursuit isn't something you do just to gain. Pursuit is what you do for the rest of your life. You go out of your way, which means, guess what? Still care about what you wear. Still care about how you look. And this goes both ways for both sexes, okay? Because what amazes me is this. I'm sorry, this is just a professional issue I do. I was like, you'll see someone go through a horrible, terrible, heart-rending divorce, okay? And all of a sudden they'll recover, and the next thing you know, they're in shape. They lost weight. They got a new hairdo. They're wearing nice clothes. They're looking really, really, really good. And why are they doing that? I mean, let's be real. They're looking to attract somebody new, right? And I asked myself the question, what would have happened if that effort was put on the other side of the divorce issue? What if we made pursuit a lifelong journey? That you cared, that you went out of your way, that you continued to open the door, that you continued to show grace, that you continued not to be, disgusting in front of somebody because now you feel like acting, guys acting like your wife's like one of the guys. No. Okay? Men were made from the dirt. Okay? That's why society don't look at a guy when a guy gets dirty, because it's just like, what? But a woman, she was taken from that. And there's a side of it where she must be shown honor. She must be shown the distinction and the beauty of what God designed. And it is. Like Pastor Ken, are you sexist? Well, guess what? God made them male and female, did he not? There is a uniqueness. There is a specialness in that end. We need to honor, because again, here's the point. Do we follow the instructions? Do we go to the manufacturer's recommended specifications that this is the way it works? Pursuit must be a lifelong endeavor. And so listen to me. Pursuit is the exercise that keeps love a verb. Too often when people get married, yeah, I love you. But it becomes a noun, not a verb. A verb means what you do. And you see, you got to work at it. You got to give yourself to it. You got to stay at it. The things that you did to win that person first, continue to do for the rest of your life. Romance is a muscle, and it needs to be exercised. Because you know as well as I do, when you don't exercise a muscle, it atrophies. And that's the problem. But it's also the good news, because from God, if you embrace this reality, like I said, it's simple, not easy. Begin to pursue them again. Ladies, dress like it's a date. Guys, act like it's a date, which means make plans. Have everything set. Surprise her. Make it exciting. Make her the center of your world. You see, if we act like this, that's how pursuing is how you keep love a verb. That's the problem too often. I love you, but it's not backed with anything. I have people who tell me something, I love you, Pastor Ken. But it ain't shown by anything, it's just words. And sometimes that's the problem. We tell our kids we love them, but sometimes it's just words. Because doing what we say we're going to do, following through, but again, reset starts with the marriage. Be faithful to one another. And that doesn't just mean not going out with somebody else. Being faithful means keep your commitments. Being faithful means keeping them the priority of your life and making pursuit a lifelong journey.